The night air was broken by the sound of laughter. Almost of a child. A horrid, twisted laugh that morphed into something inhuman. A call that echoed off the walls. We were told to lock the doors. Let nobody in, they said. And then the screams started. The horrible, horrible screams. I unlatched the door to try to help a young girl, but a stupid figure charged out of the darkness. It looked like a dog, licking its blood-soaked claws and its fangs. Heavens me. They dove right into that girl. It was occupied with eating her alive, so I was able to make it back inside. I'll never forget her cries. Welcome to the Dungeon Crawl, everybody. How you doing?
Welcome, hello. Hey, I am Braxton.
Are you Braxton?
I am Braxton. Certainly not some sort of freaky cultist who,
Good.
Worships a creature of the abyss.
I sure hope not. That'd be
Definitely
ridiculous.
not. That'd be crazy.
Praise Yeenoghu!
Ooh,
Sorry.
On the topic of that, yeah, so
I'm
sorry
Ryan.
about the creepy intro. Yeah, he is Ryan. Definitely not also someone who supports the abyss.
Definitely not.
Yeenoghu 2020. But today, I guess we're taking our first dive into our sort of own monster manual.
Yeah.
I don't know.
A Dungeon Crawler's Guide.
Dungeon Crawler's Guide, DC. Oh, not to be confused with DC Comics.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, we've been thinking about this since we've made the podcast.
Yeah,
It's
the
been
inception.
our goal to kind of get to this part, and every time we finish an episode, Ryan's like, "Hey, can we do monsters?"
I love
Like, hold
diving
on.
into monsters.
Yeah, he reads monster manuals and other resources all of the time. So
That's kind of where the idea birthed from, because I started to try to stretch my DM skills. Had the monster, because I realized I've looked through all the manuals and stuff, but I've never spent time with each specific monster. So I started going through each page, writing up some lore, some history about it, and then trying to make some adventure hooks so I could include them in the game.
right, and yeah, how we landed on Gnolls, as you can see in the title, we were tossing around a couple of other ideas. I think
Yeah, kind of the stereotypical, the ones everyone
beginning
thinks
monster,
of.
right? Yeah, like goblins or
Orcs.
goblins or goblins
More goblins. Yeah.
or more goblins. I mean, that's even how we started. Our
Yeah.
most recent campaign was with a goblin incursion.
Nothing wrong with some
and
good
it was-
old goblins.
No. But if you're like me and you consume media or medieval media or anything that's just involved in RPGs, you get a little tired of goblins.
Yeah.
So I think Ryan was like, well, here are some monsters that we could go with that aren't goblins, but are still kind of low level. And Gnolls was in there, and I said, I think we could do any of them except for Gnolls.
Yeah, I'm
He
curious.
Why is that?
When you think of Gnoll, why don't you like Gnolls when you first thought of them?
Well, before I'd read some juicy lore on them, I didn't know much about them at all. And when I heard Gnolls, I don't know, I thought of that mission that we'd had in our previous session, and they were just kind of army fodder, and there wasn't too much flavor about them. So I thought they were just, hyena-like anthropomorphic people that, ate and killed.
But
So
there's
I was
more.
like, that seems kind of boring. Oh, there's a lot more.
Yeah.
Quite a lot, especially with the kind of the source material that we're going through today. And Ryan, if you wouldn't mind letting me know what that is.
Well, we would do a couple things. The main one is Volo's Guide. What's the full title of that? Volo's Guide to Monsters?
Volo's
something
Guide
like
to
that?
Monsters.
Yeah. Was sent out, made a couple years ago, I think, by Wizards of the Coast. It's got a bunch of specific creatures. They dive into mind flayers and goblins, I think, is in there too. There's a bunch of things. Giants.
Yeah, goblins is right after
Kobolds,
the,
hags, bunch of cool things. And we use that as well as, the normal monster manual. And I also use a little bit of Mordenkainen in this Tome of Foes to learn a little bit more about Yeenoghu, the demon guy that we'll get into.
Yeenoghu? Let me spell that out for you. It's Yeenoghu.
Yeah, it's something.
Decide however you want to say that. I'm sure there's a correct pronunciation, but
Yeenoghu.
me and Ryan are saying it a bunch of different ways, so I'll have to apologize if I sound like I don't know how to pronounce it.
And then the
Spoiler alerts, because I don't.
Yeah, the other one I looked at is Game Master's Toolkit, Ultimate Bestiary, Revenge of the Horde. And I also did a little deep dive into some older editions because I think
to me, even if they're not applicable as in like combat wise, some of the best lore I've found is in like the 3.5e and the 4th edition old monster manuals. There's some juicy stuff.
Right.
In there.
Well, even think about it back then, especially at that time. I'm not sure when it came out, but I'm almost certain it was over 10 or something years ago.
Yeah.
During that time, the internet wasn't as full-fledged as it is now, and people were just writing. So all these resources are out there. And for me particularly, I'm always interested in, the lore of the Hells, but there isn't a ton in the official 5e monster manual or really any sort of official material. You have to go outside to learn more, or to like the earlier editions of D&D. There's plenty of information there. So never exclude those.
So diving in to Gnolls as creatures, I think you need to start with the birth of the Gnoll, which
where do they come from?
Well, as we were mentioning, goes all the way back to Yeenoghu, the demon prince of slaughter and senseless destruction, or also known as the beast of butchery. What a guy.
Doesn't sound like a guy that I'd want to sit in an elevator with.
I don't know. You could be a cool dude. Might stink.
Not if he wants to kill everything.
True. Fair point.
I personally don't want to. So I don't think our goals align.
Well, it's said, speaking of why you probably wouldn't be in a place and at least around this guy, it's said that whenever he enters the material plane, and apparently he's entered the material plane quite a bit, more than any other of the abyssal dudes, he goes on senseless rampages, and hyenas flock to him, and as hyenas do, will eat the corpses of all the people he's killed. And they eat so much, because I guess the corpses that he leaves behind are just so delicious and juicy and suckle, that they eat until they're unable to walk. I've been there, I've had to take off my belt a little bit and loosen out the jeans.
Take a trip to Arby's.
Yeah, exactly. But I've never exploded and burst into a torrent of blood rain and transformed into a gnoll. So that's a little. That's something I haven't done
can
yet.
happen, actually.
Well, you've seen it.
Let's try to describe what he looks like for these people. Of course, there are images you could look up, but he's also a sort of anthropomorphized hyena demon.
Yeah, kind of a humanoid dude.
Think of like a Joker smile, a maw that goes all the way back to his ears with massive teeth that are just ridden with blood, sort of a goatee fur thing.
It's about 12 to 14 feet tall, I believe, something like that.
Oh, gosh. He's got a massive hump, kind of like how you look on a hyena where they've got that just arch, like hunchback.
Yeah.
Massive claws and mandibles, more animal-like feet or hoofs with a long tail, carries around this massive flail that he also sort of bequeaths unto his most.
Do you know what the flail's called?
Powerful. I saw it at one point, but
it's
tell it to me.
The Butcher. What a name.
He's
Yeenoghu the Butcher. New episode of The Boys.
The Boys. People have been watching that lately.
Yeah, it's a good show, man.
It is. I've heard it's good. We'll stick to my anime, my Chinese cartoons. I was just watching something.
What a nerd.
Off topic. Anyway. Wow. Yeah, calling me a nerd. We're going through source material for D&D, this imaginary world. We have no basis to call anybody nerds, right?
Yeah, we don't.
No basis
I'm
whatsoever.
a nerd.
Let's dive a bit more into Yeenoghu and kind of what his ultimate
the best
goal
part.
is.
I think you somehow, you must have missed the best feature of him is his clothing. He's wearing a bunch of discarded shields, breastplates, and I think the best part, I've thought about putting this on as well, the flayed skin of my enemies. Doesn't that sound like something you'd like to wear?
Quite fashionable.
It might keep you warmer in the winter.
Or give you disease.
That too.
Very possible.
But he has a whole plane in the abyss, this guy. Yeenoghu is a whole layer. And it's said that his wanderings in the abyss are like the meanderings of a storm. That they pass through, him and his cultists pass through an area like a hurricane, just unpredictable and destructive. What a sight.
Oh, man. He is most happy when he's sitting on a pile of corpses looking at all of the wreck and ruin in front of him.
Sounds great,
man. That's his ideal date, if his date is also dead. Good time. He's a great guy. Find him on Tinder.
Yeah, it's got his top things he looks for a lady is does she like to see the
CEO
sight
of a corporation.
Yeah.
He's a fearless leader. His subordinates follow him with no question.
I mean, would you question this guy? I don't think I would.
Probably not. No. Unless I wanted to die, then maybe.
True.
Maybe yes. But his sort of creed is, I believe, hunger, fear, and what was the third one, Ryan?
Strength.
Yep. And he instills those 3 things into his followers, his Gnolls.
Yeah.
And that is all they feel.
And he just wants senseless destruction, and uses the Gnolls kind of as a means to this end. He prefers to strike. I thought this was fascinating. Is that he prefers to strike into his prefers to hunt and strike fear into his prey before actually attacking them. And his layer of the abyss is just barren hills and ravines, and he basically just turns it into one giant hunting ground for him to go pursue his captured mortals, and just like an endless game of murder.
That reminds me of always back to Skyrim. Do you remember that one mission? I don't think it's Vermina. Which god is it? It's Hircine, I think.
Maybe?
Hircine is a werewolf. And there's a mission where you get forced to put this ring on that also can turn you into a werewolf. And in order to sort of gain his favor and finish the Daedric quest is to hunt the guy who, tried to con this ring onto you, who is also a werewolf. You enter this cave that you think it is a cave, but you get there and it's this glorious hunting ground with trees and foliage and massive rocks everywhere. And you have this game of cat and mouse with this werewolf dude. And I think it's kind of similar to this. That's more for the idea of like hunting and the sport.
It's like the old book called The Most Dangerous Game, the old short story where this guy just has an island and he puts people on it and hunts them. Terrifying.
No thanks. That does not sound like an island vacation that I want to go on.
And just kind of all the demon lords kind of instruct some madness upon people. Just kind of give you a little flair of what, if you were around Yeenoghu, what might happen to you. The different madnesses that are on this chart and Mordenkainen's for Yeenoghu is, quote, I get caught up in a flow of anger and try to stroke others around me into forming an angry mob. All right. Next one is the flesh of other intelligent creatures is delicious. That would not be a good flaw to have. I rail against the laws and customs of civilization, attempting to return to a more primitive time. I hunger for the deaths of others, and I'm constantly starting fights in the hope of seeking bloodshed. And finally, I keep trophies from the bodies I have slain, turning them into adornments.
Interesting. There's something else like that in Volos as well, where it highlights the demonic influence that a pack of Gnolls kind of wreak on a village. Those include, and you can roll a d12 to decide if you're trying to make a Gnoll encounter very quickly. Demonic influences include food and drink begin to spoil, animals become rabid and vicious, a terrible storm erupts, minor earthquakes strike, residents suffer bursts of short-term madness, folk indulge in decadence, excessive drinking, quarrels turn violent, friends betray one another, or none, which is lame, but But these Gnolls, and I think we'll touch on this a lot, is that they aren't as much of an individual creature as they are a hive mind for one purpose, and that is to feed Yeenoghu.
Yeah. Lead to his you were describing this earlier before we start recording, just the ideal what Yeenoghu wants to turn the material plane into is just endless fighting and destruction, and at the final fight is ending, he's gonna rise up from the abyss and kill all those guys and just rule over corpses.
Yeah, all those that served him, even his most powerful harbinger. He will come up, say, cool, you did great, lop his head off and be like, all right, here we are.
And for that guy, that's all he ever wanted.
Most likely. Imagine that. So how can we bring Gnolls into our campaign? We know a bit about the background and what they do, why they do it, and who they do it for.
Well,
but what are Gnolls?
I mean, I think the best way to learn about Gnolls is to dive inside the mind of a Gnoll.
Okay, so there's a grouping of journal excerpts that have been written within Volo's Guide to Monsters that we're going to read a little bit from.
Yeah. This is from a journal recovered from a slain cultist of Yeenoghu. Day 2.
The subject continues to growl and struggle, despite the removal of its arms and legs. I will let it starve for a few days to weaken its mental fortitude. If the Gnoll does have some sort of tie to the Abyss, I must keep my focus on exploiting that link, even though the creature's mind might remain aware.
Day 6.
No appreciable loss of vigor.
Day 11.
Still no appreciable loss of vigor.
Day 13.
Ritual must commence tomorrow, despite subject's high level of mental activity.
Day 14.
The ritual brought our minds together. I was assailed simultaneously by hunger and rage, as if some great force from beyond had reached out and commanded me only to eat and kill. Though it only lasted a short time, it was a terrifying feeling to my human mind. But in a way, it was also comforting to feel myself a part of a much greater design. What I felt was not the hunger of one beast, but the hunger of all of them.
Day 15.
Use the ritual to join our minds again. This time I realized where the hunger began. I was consumed by the infinite hunger and boundless rage of great Yeenoghu, and I knew could never be satiated. Yet I felt driven to feed my lord. I killed and devoured a goat while linked to the Gnoll's mind. I had set aside a knife for the deed, but killed it with my bare hands instead. The flesh was warm. I fed myself. I fed Yeenoghu.
Day 16.
Third use of ritual. As my connection to my lord deepens, I leave my old concerns behind. His hunger is all that matters. It is greater than me. It is greater than us all. It is his mark. He made us. He drives us. He eats what we eat. He kills what we kill. He will come if we eat well. He will come if we kill well. He will come if we eat well. He will come if we kill well. He will kill and he will eat. And we shall be he, and he shall be we, never alone, never afraid, never hungry.
So I think that's a good example.
Yeah.
I think it's a good example. Kind of shows that Gnolls embody the dark urges of Yeenoghu.
And while it does say inside the mind of a Gnoll, really Ryan was touching on this, it's hard to roleplay a Gnoll outside of what it does in combat or what action it takes, because it's not going to speak to people. That's its last.
It's a pure psychopath.
Desire.
They don't like communicating. They don't even like communicating with each other.
Nope. And the only real way to get inside the mind of a mole is mole. No, we're doing moles next week. Inside the mind of a Gnoll is to really consider what one of its cultists might be. And I feel like this journal entry is the fall of a human into a mindless, rage-filled cultist for Yeenoghu.
And leading it to what we were mentioning before is that I like to view them more as like a force of nature rather than an individual group. They like a hive mind, like you were saying. They can ravage an entire countryside and just reshape it to fall like a tornado coming through. It just slaughters everyone and doesn't care about morals or anything like that.
Just a massive wave of laughing hyenas, murdering and killing. Something I always found really interesting that they do is that anytime they murder somebody, they almost always will take their armor, their weapons, because while they aren't intelligent, they do recognize the value of things that help them attain their goals. If it can kill or keep them alive, they'll take it.
Yeah, they have no care for gold or jewels or anything, but they understand what weapons are, and I mean that's important for them.
There was an interesting part in Voles that I saw about treasure. So if you've got a kind of nasty player group, and they're more like thieves and they want to steal things, they can track a group of Gnolls and wait for them to ransack a village, and they will more than likely leave the shiny bits, the more durable ones, like
just
gold
coming
and jewelry.
after the fact.
Yeah, it's just something that wipes over a place. Of course, you'll have to dance around the corpses and whatnot, but you'll be able to find the most valuable pieces.
It's like a plague.
As long as they aren't cloth. Yeah, it's kind of crazy.
Pure destruction is beauty, as they say.
Is beauty. But Gnolls, one of the big reasons I wasn't so keen on doing this at first is I thought Gnolls were Gnolls. That's it. There's no hierarchy. There's no, next in command. They're just low-level creatures that you can kill pretty easily, which is not true at all. And I should have realized that as well, because goblins, they have hobgoblins and, so on and so forth.
Bugbears.
Goblin chieftains, bugbears, which I didn't even know they were really a part of the goblin, family.
Mm-hmm.
But let's dive a bit into the different class of gnolls, Ryan.
Sure.
Why don't you take that away?
I think we'll start at the top, the big boys. So we talked about how sometimes there's a loved one of some guy that's really up there, and will give this flail, but that's much more kind of not as common. Usually there will be in war bands, there'll be a pack lord, a guy who kind of calls the shots. And I almost view in the same vein as the pack lord as shamans. They're the people who will while the pack lord will be kind of the champion and the biggest Gnoll in the group. The shaman would be the person who, and it's usually the oldest female, will be the person who reads the omens. Gnolls are huge about omens. They view omens in nearly everything that they do, and they have this shaman that will kind of interpret these omens and just kind of give you a view of what these omens are, and see if you can find any beauty in these. Is blood trails, some splatters after a kill, the sight of arrows that cuts into their skin after a battle, the rush of wind, and possibly the sounds of laughter or howling that just come from nowhere, just voices that they're hearing.
So imagine this. A Gnoll infantry kills a particularly fat and gross human, and his blood splatters everywhere. Gnoll goes, "Shaman, hey, what does this mean? The blood splattered this way."
I look over, and it's, maybe it looks like a cloud that's headed to the east. Let's go to the east. Let's go kill some more people. Let's go.
Literally just that.
Yeah. So that's why I view shamans as kind of the same level as the pack lord, because they're the ones that are more or less interpreting and telling everybody what's the game plan. The next, I would also add the fangs of Yeenoghu, who are these we're going to get more to the rarity sections as well. They're the ones who are gifted with the power to spawn more gnolls. And I noted in the other editions that I looked at that this was different. And the Fangs of Yeenoghu had existed, but they weren't able to spawn more gnolls. In current 5th edition, at least in Volos, it mentions that, actually it might be in Monsters Manual, I don't remember. It mentions that these kills that the Fangs have will, usually they do with their fangs, then the hyenas will eat afterwards, and will kind of, these are the ones that turn these hyenas into some more gnolls. In other editions,
requirement there.
Yeah, in other editions though, the gnolls were able to reproduce on their own. So I think, as always, grab what you like. It's your world. Do whatever you want in it. Find what you enjoy.
Something that I like about this particularly, and I'm going to touch on this when we get to the big bad of the group, and that's always at the end. It's something I really wanted to talk about. I put it in my notes. I'm like, talk about this. But specifically with fights, a way to make them more interesting or really turn the tables if your group is doing too well against your current fight, and you don't want to just, Deus Ex Machina, pop in some more enemies and adds. You want to have a reason why there's more. So you've got the Fangs still alive, and the hyenas are still there. So your group has not killed a Fang. The shaman's still there casting spells and doing whatever they do. And the hyenas, the scrubs, your party's not as worried about them. They've killed a big chunk of the medium people, the gnolls themselves. They think they've got it covered. Fang goes to one of these decaying bodies, and another hyena runs over there. You ignore it because why are they paying attention to a corpse? Well, as you notice and you look back over, another gnoll pops up here and there and everywhere, and your party is kind of screwed again because gnolls have been birthed from these corpses and these hyenas who are satiating their hunger and sort of leveling up in this Yeenoghu hierarchy.
Coming after the Fangs is just kind of the basic gnoll dudes. Some canned fodder. And then
and they can have different weapons, the warriors or the hunters. And if they've got, a swoid. It does say that most gnolls will have a bow,
but
which I found interesting as well.
The bow, yeah.
No, but they like to... There's the part of instilling fear into their enemies as well as cutting off their escape, which is why they have the bows.
Yeah, it's supposed to slow them, which I thought was fascinating. But if you look at a lot of these stat blocks for Gnolls, while they have the bow, it's just a bow. In the Revenge of the Horde book that I was looking at, some of the stat blocks in there, and I thought this was a great feature, had some of the hunter guys who, being an archer in a Gnoll warband is not, is very much looked down upon. But they had this poison that would slow the speed of whoever they hit, which I thought that's exactly what they, that's kind of the whole point of these bows. It'll slow them down perfectly. Obviously, they have to see if they save the DC, but if they don't, then their speed is halved.
And what happens there is the Gnoll flesh gnawers, who kind of wait on the sidelines, ready to get any prey that has been weakened and just
fast
kill them off. They are fast, hellish, like a tornado, a cyclone of just metal and blades and edges and claws, and they'll kill anybody that's kind of unable to get out of their grasp.
Yeah. And we got
the assassins,
the Witherlings, which is a very interesting little group of dudes that are the product
basically
of
undead Gnolls.
Yeah,
right?
well, they're the product of Gnoll infighting. That the Gnolls will kind of turn on each other if they haven't had some good kills in a while and are hungry. They'll start fighting on each other, and those who die, the ones who are eaten and devoured by the others, they preserve the bones. The warband preserves their bones, and then they do a ritual later that the Pack Lord leads that raises them up from the dead, keeping these guys on.
Gnolls have everything.
Yeah, but I mean the Witherlings are pretty crap, but they're good cannon fodder.
Absolutely. So is it time?
Well, then we got the cultists.
We do have the cultists, yes.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's get the cultists first.
There are many cultists of Yeenoghu that are not Gnolls, but non-Gnoll cultists do exist, and they're oftentimes kind of outcasts from society. Those people who have just lost all hope and descended into nihilism, those people who are open to Yeenoghu's madness. And as we were talking about, these are the only people that you would really be able to learn about Gnolls from, that you'd be able to actually have a communication with this dude, this cultist, if he is a part of the warband, because they aren't completely mindless psychopaths quite yet. It still wouldn't be easy to have a conversation with this guy, but it'd be easier than having it with a Gnoll. So,
right, see the journal that we read from before.
Yeah,
as soon as they're touched by Yeenoghu in a sense, they're more than likely going to become one of his cultists or die from insanity, something like that. There was a part in Volos that described some physical appearances of both Gnolls and cultists. I'm trying to look for it right now because I really wanted to read it.
Yeah, it's got them. So they can be missing an arm.
Yeah, missing. There it is.
Infested with maggots. Can you imagine that? A Gnoll's running at you with maggots crawling on some open wounds that it just received or something? Ugh.
So they're not some beefy hyena who's muscly and ready to pounce and kill you. They're decaying, missing limbs and eye.
Nasty.
They move with a limp, or they're covered in burn wounds. They have a vestigial twin embedded on their back.
Yeah, what is up with that?
I don't even know where that came from, but they're
Get a twin
loud
on
and
your back.
wheeze.
That'd be terrifying.
Your group is in a forest and they're running around, and there's a pack of Gnolls, and the thing that tips them off, your monk has a particularly high passive perception. He hears loud wheezing breaths off in the forest, or something like that. Maybe they come across a tree or a corpse that looks like it's been melted away by acidic drool, which it says they also could have. You're fighting one and they have sores that are just bleeding and weeping, or they smell terribly. You sense that smell and that tips you off. Gnolls are here. We have to protect ourselves.
Well,
they just have
the
weapons
final
sticking
one
out
there
of
in
them.
that list, weapons still embedded in an old wound. This guy's just got a sword stuck in his back that he's still trucking along.
Yeah,
what a
they've
badass.
got plenty of character. They're pretty gross.
Oh, hi, buddy.
They don't really care for bathing. They're just wanting to eat, instill fear, and be strong.
Yes. And then
As Yeenoghu would say.
Well, the final dude in the hierarchy is the Flind.
Oh, I'm so excited about
The Flind is the exceptionally large big boy Gnoll. Very rare. As it says, no warband will have more than one of these guys. And even still, most warbands probably won't have one of these guys. But if they are blessed to have one of them, then the Flind carries a specific weapon, a flail, a magical flail that saps the body and mind of any foe that feels its touch.
Okay. I wanted to talk about this.
I think I know where you're going.
It's similar. Yeah, it's similar to with the fangs. If these flins are about to fall and your party is barely struggling to take it out, and they're one hit left, and next turn is, I believe it just has to be any of them, correct? Let's see it.
A Gnoll.
It has to be, yeah. Any Gnoll comes up and deals the final blow to this flind. They then, in a burst of abyssal energy, become one of them.
Which is, the way I view it, as kind of like, because they view this Flynn as this special messenger of Yeenoghu, but I think at the same time, they also, similar to the Pack Lord, that the pack is important, but I can still see a Gnoll wanting to be, the big blessed guy. I don't see why he wouldn't want to be the guy's blessed by the Lord. I can see him seeing, okay, this guy's about to die. I want to kill him. I want to consume. I want to become him. I want to take his spot. Now that I'm going to backstab him right now and become him.
And if that doesn't happen, what you can do in this fight is, as it is described in Volo's guide, the death or appearance of any flind or for any other reason causes a war band to descend into brutal fighting. Sometimes a new leader emerges from the pack after putting down its rivals, but more often the band fragments and the survivors go their separate ways, and through that, Gnoll witherlings can be created, or they just kind of dissipate. And of course, those Gnolls individually will likely go meet up with other Gnolls and create more packs.
Yeah,
but
there's a lot of stop that for a little bit.
Yeah, there's a lot of interesting dynamics that come about when you are tackling one of these flins. I don't know how to read it, but it was so cool to me. I think it'd be a really cool boss at the end of this.
And they are
little arc.
They're by far the most devastating Gnoll guy. I mean, like if we can pull up the thing for the dude. Let me see if I can find it real fast. I didn't have it. Yeah, right. It was Flynn. So these guys are CR9, I believe. Yeah, CR9. Compared to every other Gnoll, that's like 5 CRs higher, 5 challenge rating higher.
Give us a bit of a reference for what CR is, though, because
we haven't talked about that.
Including myself, I don't know too much.
So CR challenge rating is a very loose interpretation of what this damage level of what this thing is. It's also attributed to XP, and the way it challenge rating 9 is 5,000 XP worth of experience, and it's supposed to be split up in certain ways by level, like how if you have 4 people in a party and they're all level 7, then they have like a daily budget, or like their highest level of thing they should be able to fight at one time is like 6,000 XP or something. So for example, I have here for 4 players that we'll do level 5 here. 4 players at level 5, their daily budget is 14,000 experience points, but a deadly encounter for them is 4,400 XP. And this is, again, a very loose interpretation. It's still, there's some things that probably have a lower CR rating than they should, because one bad roll, you just killed a party member. So
yeah,
it's important to keep in mind what these guys are before just tossing it, using, places that just toss random encounters in together, because you gotta make sure you understand what the creature is first.
Especially if they've got an ability like being able to essentially summon a second one whenever it's about to die. Just instant reheal. Kind of crazy. Regeneration.
But most Gnolls are closer to a CR 1 to 4. So having this guy as a 9 is, this will be, like you were saying, a big bad. This is a way to keep Gnolls relevant for higher levels of play.
Right. So if you've got this sort of lead in the campaign that they've been seeing Gnolls here and there, and they kind of got away from a bit, but they've been traveling for a while, and Gnolls started to pick up again, and they get on the trail of the Abyss, and they start finding influence of Yeenoghu around, and they get into the stronghold, and at the end of it is one of these commanders, this guy.
And
so that's kind of
what
scale
their flail does, it's got 3 different things. One that will inflict some madness upon them, make them to attack a random target within its reach, which, if you guys know the confusion spell, that's basically the same idea. There's also the next flail of pain, which just inflicts just a ton of psychic damage. And then the flail of paralysis, which I think is, depending on how you read this and do this, can be absolutely devastating for somebody, because if they fail the con save, it's a 16 con save, they're then paralyzed to the end of its next turn. And the way that the multi-attack reads for this thing, you can attack with one of its different flail attacks or 3 with its longbow, which is crazy to me. You can then do the paralysis and then do, like the flail of pain the next turn and just do ridiculous amounts of damage to this guy. To one of the party dudes. So that's devastating.
It's pretty tough. The one thing about D&D that I tend to dislike a bit is there's not so much collaboration. It takes a lot of creativity to protect somebody that is paralyzed and about to get essentially action surged by a massive guy like this.
Well, this can all happen on one turn. One with each of its different flails. So what I would do if I were to use this, I would definitely do the paralysis one first. And if no one else is within reach, because it's a 5-foot radius, if no one else is within reach, paralysis on the guy in front of me, then the pain. Actually, well, I guess maybe madness first, then paralysis, and then pain. Because then because once you're paralyzed, it's an auto crit. And imagine taking
use the madness on a paralyzed guy, though.
That's what I say. You do the madness first.
Do the madness on somebody else.
Sure, yeah, you can do that. So if no one's within reach. But the flail of madness is well, so you do the madness first, have them attack somebody else, and then paralyze and pain. But yeah, if there's multiple people around, that can be brutal.
Yeah, I would not want to fight one of these things, Ryan. Please, no. We did encounter Gnolls once upon a time in our campaign. I think we've talked about the sort of war-like instance that we had with one of these particular knights that we were trying to take down, and there was a group of Gnolls under their command, which is particularly interesting because the Gnolls prefer to attack villages that are kind of weak and sickly, so that they could. Excuse me, I just burped a little bit.
Gross.
Disgusting, but
he's
they
half
prefer
Gnoll.
to get weaklings so that they can just have an easy meal.
Well, go
ahead.
No, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Oh. I was just gonna say that
very common
we
in our
can
group.
dive into that. That's a great segue to the tactics of Gnolls.
Yes,
That they usually prefer to do the quote as it says: "An enemy that can fight back is an enemy to save for later." That they care for the sheer number of people that they can kill, and if there's a guy who can defend himself, then they will leave and kind of keep from a distance and wait to find a time where they can return and slaughter this guy.
Yeah, and if they're ever going to fight an enemy that is strong, they have to have a direct reason that it fulfills one of Yeenoghu's desires. It has to be something that really makes them think that they're going to gain favor with their god, essentially.
And I think
otherwise,
it's easy to think, looking at these guys, that they'll just be mindless fighters as well. You think there's,
that's what I thought.
Their intelligence is, 11. It's not bad. I mean,
Whoa,
the other
yeah.
one, well, that's the Flynn. The Gnoll Fleshnaw, for example, is -1. He's 8 intelligence. So you could theorize they're still pretty, just almost like dogs. So they don't animals with animalistic minds where they just attack without knowledge, but they do coordinate to overwhelm a single enemy at a time. So if there's one guy that's really strong and there's a pack of Gnolls, they're just gonna swarm this guy until he's dead, and then go from that guy to the next one, and from that guy to the next one. Because I think they would understand that otherwise, if they split up, they would not be able to overcome these odds, and they just want to kill. So let's all work together and kill this guy. And I think that in lies the real threat to a party, even at high levels. If you introduce 10 Gnolls and send them at one guy, that's a lot of rolls. That's a lot of damage.
A lot of rolls. That's a lot of damage. Flex tape or whatever it is.
Just slap it on there.
There's another thing in here in YOLO's book here. YOLO's.
YOLO.
Oh, rip. Okay, so it's the Hunter's Chant. Do you remember that, Ryan?
Yeah.
So I'm not going to actually do super in-depth with it. I'm just going to read it off, but keep these things in mind. The description beforehand is: the simple declaration of Yeenoghu's power was devised by a small cult to the demon lord discovered deep in a forest. A group of woodcutters facing starvation turned to cannibalism to survive and ultimately fell under Yeenoghu's sway. Gnolls sing a similar chant in their language while they seek out prey. And Gnolls' language is mostly like hyena, giggles, and kind of grunts. But here is the chant. The first gift is hunger. It is his blessing. It is our call to bring death. The second gift is death. Death provides our strength. Death purges our fear. The third gift is fear. We fear that we will fail him. We fear the onset of hunger.
I don't know if you were feeling this whenever you're reading about the strength, hunger, and fear stuff, but to me it sounded like a workout plan. Strength, hunger, and fear. We got it all. You got to make sure you have that when you head on into the gym, everybody, all right?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So it's you kill and devour a foe with the strength. Use the hunger to motivate the Gnoll to go forth, and the fear, use a weapon against the enemies to make them easier to slaughter and murder.
A recipe for destroying a village. The Hunter's Chant.
Beautiful.
Beautiful. So if you're ever wanting to make a kind of arc around Gnolls, be sure to include cultists so that they can interact and kind of speak with voices of Yeenoghu.
Yeah, I was gonna ask. So
they're pretty cool.
Yeah, we can. We can finally get into the how would you use them in a campaign. I think the easy way, as we mentioned previously, is to just have a whole campaign, maybe just an arc or two, about Yeenoghu returning to the material plane. This would set Gnolls at the forefront of the entire story, obviously, as they're kind of the face of Yeenoghu. Though, as we talked about, it may be difficult to make them equally as hard for a party as they continue to level up instead of just increasing the numbers. But I mean, there are tweaks you can do. On that same page with the Hunter's Chant, there's a section on their allies, things that Gnolls like to be around. And I think you could use these. You can bring in demons. You can bring in ghouls. You can bring in, all sorts of different beasts and things that will kind of increase the intensity of a campaign around Gnolls.
I think this says Lucrotus or Lucrotus. I'm not sure the font there. But these things that also, associate with Gnolls were brought forth during Yeenoghu's ancient incursions into the world. Lucrotus are bigger, smarter, and faster than Gnolls. When one joins a warband, it doesn't strive to lead the group, which would cause unneeded conflict, but rather they try to serve and protect the leader. Lucrotus' dedication to Yeenoghu is as fervent as any Gnoll, and its main goal is to always advance the cause of the Lord of Savagery over its own. That's pretty cool. Also, trolls are involved in this as well.
Mm-hmm. So they got lots of allies.
Lots of them. But something I want to do right now is I love this. They've got a roll table in case you wanted to create, a pretty quick Gnoll warband, or if you were wanting to have a good start for this and just kind of getting a basis.
Oh, I heard some dice there.
Yeah, I've got them right here. A little shuffle. So they've got some names here, and I kind of want to see what we can do. So it's a D6, essentially 2D6 to pick first and a second part of a name. So let's roll this. Okay, so we've got a 5 and a 4. So it is Rotted Mongrels. It's the name of our Gnoll warband.
Rotted Mongrels.
So the composition is next. You will roll, let's see.
How many dudes are
so there's specific categories. There's Gnoll Fangs, Hunters, Flesh Gnars, Wars, and Hyenas. And for each of
how
those,
many of each are in the warband?
It's going to take a little bit, but I want to do it anyways. So for the Fangs, you roll 1d4 plus 1. So let's get a d4 and roll that. And this is how many Fangs that will be there. These are the guys that are essentially the shamans. So we've got 2. So you add 1. So there's 3 Fangs in our...
I want to point out that the shamans specifically that I was talking about aren't in any of Wizards of the Coast stuff. The shamans that I got were from the Revenge of the Horde. So if you want a shaman Gnoll, then I'd check out that book. There's some really cool stuff. It also splits up Gnolls into rock Gnolls, plains Gnolls, and gutter Gnolls.
There's lots of stuff about these guys. I was not expecting it. For the Gnoll Hunters, I rolled another d4 and got another 2. So we've got 3 Hunters to accompany our 3 Fangs. So for the Flesh Gnars, these are these guys that are on the outskirts picking up the easy kills. They're sharp and quick. That's 2d4. So there's a lot of these guys. Could be. So we've got a 3 and 2. So we've got 5 of those. And for Warriors, which are the common Gnolls, you do 6d6. I can do this real quick. They're 8. Another 8, so 16. And so 16 plus 3, we've got 19 Warriors. And for Hyenas, you do 4d6. We got 8 again, and 7. So do the math. That is a 15 on those Hyenas.
So that's a pretty big... and this is just a war band. One of the other ways I was thinking about using... if I were to use Gnolls in a campaign or adventure, is that you could have, with the abyss is kind of leaking into the material plane, and there's increased Gnoll activity, or maybe the ritual slayings are because of this abyssal thing. And what you can have is these Gnolls, these different splintered off warbands, will come together, trying to bring Yeenoghu into the material plane. And so that's just one warband. Imagine 2 of those or 3 of those.
And the
Things
even
can start getting
scarier
pretty
part
intense.
is what happens with the warband leadership. So you roll a d6, and if it's a flind, the numbers, everything I just did, get doubled. If it's 2 through 4, it's an old pack lord, and nothing happens to the numbers. But if there's no leader, it's a 5 to 6, those numbers get halved. Okay, so we're going to roll a d6 and see what kind of leadership we've got. We got a 4. So there's an old pack lord, so the numbers stay the same.
Lord.
We're not going to get into this part, but there's also rolls that you can do to add special creatures, like a Barlgura.
Yeah, some demons.
Some Dretches, Gnolls, demons, things like that. And then a d10 for a physical trait. Number 10 is an albino, so that would be cool. Well, let's do that real quick. I wanted to roll.
Yeah, shared physical trait across the warband.
So we got a 5. Our warband, I believe it was, I said it incorrectly, but we're going to do the rotted mongrels. They are all constantly cackling and laughing.
Yeah.
Like that. So that's something that you can do in a quick way to be able to create a very interesting and diverse group of pretty much anything is finding tables like that. But specifically for Gnolls, this is a great tool in Volo's Guide to Monsters. So if you ever feel like picking that up, do it.
Gets you started on thinking about things.
So hopefully we've kind of sold you on Gnolls. If there's anything else you wanted to touch on.
Well, I want to mention one of my other favorite adventure ideas that I had here. And luckily, most of the people who are in my current campaign listen to the podcast. So luckily, none of these ideas I'm currently using.
So I'm kind of worried about that.
Yeah, not spoiling anything. But this other one I thought would be cool if you slowly feed an attack on the party. So let's say, for example, you have the party in a civilization in some large city, and they just start to hear inklings about, the farmer has disappeared. He didn't bring in his normal quota of food, or the guy that goes out to hunt in the wilderness has not returned either. That's a little odd. I mean, it's just some peasants. Who cares too much? Maybe they just went off to another village and decided not to come back. Not really a problem. Then, there's if the party were to go investigate at this point, they wouldn't only find any Gnolls, they'd find some traps being set out. People are being hunted, but the Gnolls themselves are not spotted. Let that be kind of something that's just held back, kind of, something to creep them out a little bit farther. What's out there? What's going on? And as a DM, I would say don't have all the people who are being disappeared just killed and eaten. That's no fun. Have some of them who are captured for rituals. So if the party doesn't find them, then they will eventually, if they ever go to the warband, they'll find them murdered in some ritual, or they will be able to save them, give them something to work for, just slaughter everybody. But then leading after that, that's when the attacks start to come. Coming at night. It's like how we read about at the beginning, coming at night in small settlements on the outskirts of the kingdom. More are left to their own devices. And then the Gnolls get larger and more brazen as they get farther and farther, the more they slaughter. And if it gets to it, if no one comes to stop them, if the party is off doing their own thing, they will come for a larger city. And I would imagine refugees who have been hearing, let's say, Gnolls are hitting the city to the far east, in the closer city. People would start hearing about this and start, there's something coming. I'm getting the hell out of here. I'm headed to the capital city. So refugees will start flocking to this other city. Well, at this point, the Gnolls have, slaughtered 5-10 cities. That's a pretty big warband. At that, if we're going along the lines of the hyenas are following them, eating, probably there's a fang or two. And I mean, if I were a Gnoll, or if I were Yeenoghu and I saw a warband doing all this, man, I'm giving them all the blessings. They're kicking ass out there.
Oh, God.
They're doing a great
48
job.
flyings, all of them.
They're doing amazing. So I would imagine eventually they would probably try to attack a big city. And if this is where the refugees are heading towards, if the adventurers are not there to stop them, this will be a bloodbath. It will not be pretty.
What he's touching on right now is something I always love, and what Ryan does for our campaign is come up with a worst case scenario or a time frame that if your players don't
Yeah.
solve this problem or deal with it, things can get out of hand. So
It's a good
whenever
way
you're
to make
making
consequences matter.
absolutely, if you're making an arc, have a worst case scenario and have different increments there at which your players can intervene and ultimately stop this sort of incursion of gnolls.
And don't worry about making your players feel bad about it. Really play up the destruction that they are letting happen if they're deciding not to go do this. They hear about the slaughter, the destruction. So that way they do end up going, but if they do end up going, then they're going to forego something else. Each decision matters. I think this is also important. Like you were saying, have ideas and lay out what will happen if the party doesn't intervene. Don't railroad and say this will happen no matter what. That's not fun. Set off what will happen if the party does not do anything. If they do something, then something might happen, to stop this from appearing. But prepare for the worst.
Prepare for the worst.
Yeah.
And for those of you who are players, how could we best have them roleplay against these guys? They are harbingers of the abyss. What if you've got a player that is curious about the abyss, maybe has a patron from there?
You could do the exact same thing as the guy that you read about, that we embodied did. You could capture one and try to get inside the mind of this creature, more or less a psychopath. I think the problem is with these creatures, with Gnolls, I think why they have a negative view on a lot of DMs and players is that it's very difficult to make compelling adventures around them, as they really don't have a motive. I think what's fascinating about NPCs and about some of the stuff we talk about with role-playing is the motivations that these enemies, that these people could have. Gnolls, their entire thing is to just slaughter and murder. I mean, there's no extra
if
thing
they had their
from
way,
that.
the world would be dead.
Yeah, so I mean, how do you can't sympathize with that, right?
So make what you do, and what I would suggest is making them part of a bigger whole. Make them a pawn in somebody else's plan.
You could even just, if you want only a section to be about them, play it up into like a horror experience. Have the Gnoll attacks only be at the beginning of a greater plague. The abyssal plane is opening. There's something coming out of it, and the Gnolls are just the beginning.
And think about this. Yeenoghu says that he has a lot of dealings with the mortal plane. Perhaps one of the other demons or denizens of the abyss knows this, and they want to figure out how to come through the ways that he does.
He also, he hates Baphomet. He hates one of the other demon princes. You could have, maybe he finally slaughters Baphomet, and the Minotaurs of Baphomet are now his. Now he's got an extra slaughter house coming to the material plane. Brace yourselves, everybody. Here come the Minotaurs.
As a DM, the world is your sandbox.
It is.
Do what you want.
The last adventure possibly I could think of is a stealth mission. I don't think it's mostly around Gnolls. It's all, pure brutality. But I think if it's a gigantic warband, how do you fight that, right? You could have a stealth mission where the party is sent to sneak in past a bunch of Gnolls, pass through the encampment to find the leader, the Flind or the warband or the war leader, and to kill them, because as you read before, if you kill that guy, everybody else will splinter off. So it's another idea to just have some instead of just combat, think of some other ideas. I think every creature in the monster manual has these other options.
So that my tea got in my throat.
Oh no, that's not good.
Braxton. That's what tea does. It goes
I know
in your
CPR.
Throat oh boy, and you swallow it. But these little tea little things got in my throat, and I'm choking. But we're okay.
Oh, but now you know. Now you know what we mean about Gnolls.
Now you know what we mean. Oh God, you'll be knolling in the deep.
Nolan in the deep. I like that one.
Yep.
The Gnoll shebang.
Oh stop. But it's time. Do you know what time it is?
Are we rolling that die?
We're rolling that die.
Roll that die.
Oh crap! I go first. I gotta get this this die. Where is it at? Dice roller. Bam! Click.
Clicked it.
All right.
So this is the time. If you don't know what we're talking about, this is the time where we roll on the sheet posted by _Crimson on our D&D behind the screen. It's a roll sheet with 2 D100 stuff on it that has a subject, and then a descriptor for that subject, and we try to make something out of it.
Try to make something out of it.
You got a 3?
And I rolled a 3.
That's an odor, my friend.
An odor, like a smell?
Yep, an odor.
Okay. What kind? Let's roll
What
that
kind
dice
of,
again.
What kind of stench you got here?
89. Give me that 89 odor.
9. Let's find out. I'm sorry? What's this? Okay. A sapient odor, which means to be wise.
You're kidding me.
Yeah. A wise odor.
This is the hardest one.
Good luck, my friend. I wouldn't even know where to begin.
I'm doing a think here. Okay.
Stretch that improv mind.
Gotcha. Okay. So, as we begin with many of our adventures, you're walking in a swamp, in a bog with your party. You've been on the hunt of a hag that has been giving some trouble for the hunters of the area, of the town that you hail from, that you've been adventuring with. For a few days now. You've been there about a month. You've got a nice cozy gig there where you just do some quests, and this happens to be one of them. Kill the hag. She's got this hut in this bog, this swamp.
Do you think I could haggle her for the hut?
I don't think so. We just need to get there and kill her. You know, as simple. I am a mercenary after all, so we just need to get this sword, internet, and cut it off. So, as these intrepid adventurers are continuing forward, it's not that complicated of a swamp. You can see trails here and there that this hag is leaving behind. You know, a feather or two, a little bottle, a potion, just some carcasses that she's been taking eyes or ingredients out. It's kind of disgusting. I'd rather just get this over with. And you keep going, sloshing through the swamp. Your socks are wet. The armor is heavy, possibly filling up with a bit of it.
I'm going to get swamp foot.
And with that rank smell and that swamp foot developing, you keep moving forward and notice that what you thought was, you know, the flatulence of your party member starts to turn a bit pleasant.
Oh.
It smells like Mom's pot pie that she always cooked back at home before she was brutally murdered by Gnolls.
I miss her every day.
Me too, brother.
I didn't know we were related.
We'll talk about that later.
Plot twist.
You keep going. And you keep going. And now that you know is your brother mercenary dude, this guy, he's smelling, and he mentions out, does that smell like my wife's perfume to you?
I thought it smelled like Mom's food.
No, it definitely smells like, you know, Horatio's cologne.
Oh.
My wife, Horatio.
Sounds like a sweetheart.
And you keep going forward. And
I'd love to meet her sometime, bro.
You come across the hut. And, you know, it's pretty typical rundown shack of a hag. Exactly what you would expect. Textbook hag hut. The HH. Hag hut. And you go up to it, and the smell is extremely strong. But it morphs again to something even more favorable. And, you know, for our whatever swamp foot dude, it turns into his favorite dish, even more so than his mom's pot pie. Whatever that might be, it draws him inevitably towards this. And for the mercenary as well, he can't seem to quit following this smell. And as they get to the door of the hut, they slam it open. They've got to kill this hag. There's no hesitation here. They've slayed countless monsters before. You see her brewing a pot, stirring it. Double, bubble, toil, and trouble. Reference there for you thespians, if I haven't said that right. And there's this aroma, this steam, this mist coming out of it. And you can follow it just like a little cartoon. It goes into your nostrils and hypnotizes. You see the hag turn towards you. She gives out a screech. But you feel dizzy. And you fall down and collapse onto the floor. And the next thing our two adventurers hear is the cackling of a hag, pulling them towards her basement.
Boom.
So what I was going for there is a smell that just kind of alters to draw you in, I guess.
Yeah.
And sentient in the sense that it is wise and knows what to alter to
and
for each person.
That's a great segue to our next monster, Manuel the Hag.
Oh, did I just set it in stone?
No, probably not. We don't know what we're gonna do next.
We were talking about hags, though.
Yeah, hacks can be fun.
It can be fun. I had to stretch my brain for that one. Sure, I bent some meanings of words there, but that's what I came
all
up
right.
with.
That's what it's all about, man. This is just to get your mind going.
I think
right.
that was my favorite one.
41. I got a map.
Ooh.
What kind of map, though? That's a great question. It's a repulsive map.
Wow. Okay, that's really fun.
All right. So, the party is sitting down after a long, long adventure through the Underdark.
It's really dark in there.
They're looking through their belongings that they have recovered. You know, the treasure. They got some health potions, some claws of onkegs or things, and a map. Well, it's in a scroll. At least I think it might be a map. Let's take a look at it.
Let's open it up.
Pull it out, take a peek. As they look at this map, looks to be possibly a treasure map leading them to, or there's an X on the northern side of this map.
It's tough to gold there.
It's tough to make out the rest of this image, though. And you see the map almost like morph in a way. The lines that were kind of making it look to be a river start to form a mouth. Then you hear...
That's not usual.
Hey, fuck you, man!
Hey, fuck you too.
The map starts yelling at you obscenities. It's repulsive. The type of... This is a map not even a mother could love.
This doesn't even go to treasure. I don't want this.
Man, just get out of my face! You walk up and toss the map away.
What the hell?
How repulsive.
How repulsive.
That's
adorable.
That's an adorable map? Are you kidding me?
Yeah, a talking map. You can tell you exactly where to go. It's like a GPS.
It makes me think of when I was in high school. I made a little sketch comedy thing with a friend of mine, and the idea was, when people say, "Man, I can make a mean sandwich," so we made a sandwich that was actually very rude and was yelling at people. Yeah, similar idea with my map.
We like puns here.
Yeah.
Well, with those two stories set aside, this has been another episode of the Dungeon Crawl
podcast.
Thank you.
Make sure you follow us on Twitter at Dungeon Crawl Pod. Send us an hate mail if you want, at thedungeoncrawlpod@gmail.com. Make sure you rate us 5 stars. Rate us 5 stars on iTunes. Leave us a review. Say how much you love Gnolls. Make some Gnoll puns.
The Mad Mage of Kavath will come for you.
Yeah, we don't want him. He's got a bunch of Gnolls. He's a Gnoll surfer.
I'm trying to think of a pun right now, but I can't.
Some Gnoll food.
Gnoll food.
Like soul food? Get it?
Well, there's a restaurant, or not a restaurant, a grocery chain. I don't know if it's a chain, called Whole Foods. Gnoll Foods.
Yeah, Gnoll Foods.
Basically any village.
Tootsie Gnoll.
Tootsie Gnoll.
The Rock and Gnoll Hall of Fame.
The Knolling Stones.
The Knolling Stones. Knoll Grain.
Knoll Grain. Okay. We'll end there.